and get her sectioned out. Like I said earlier, Rhea does use New Wash at home. And if you guys haven't heard of New Wash, it's a cream cleanser. I love it because it's super gentle on the hair. A lot of people that have like psoriasis or eczema or even like dandruff, I recommend using New Wash because I feel like it is the most gentle product that you could use to cleanse your hair with. It uses essential oils and aloe vera to wash your hair, so all the dirt buildup, product buildup, things that you don't need in your hair, and you need to cleanse it out. I like to use New Wash because it leaves the oils that you do need in your hair, and then all the product and dirt and grime and all those things that you don't need in your hair, it kind of cleanses it out really well. Okay, so I've sufficiently re-wet Rhea's hair, and how I'm going to section her hair out is I'm going to comb all the hair at natural fall, really moving it around with my fingertips to see where the hair actually falls at its natural state. Now remember earlier when I was talking to you guys about the consultation, all of this hair at the crown is already falling naturally to behind her radial. So I want to keep that in my halo section, so I'm going to just section that out. And whenever you do section out hair, it doesn't have to be a perfect halo section or a perfect symmetrically same horseshoe or anything like that. You just kind of want to see how the hair wants to fall at its natural state and take your sectioning pattern with that, you know? So moving through my crown, leaving these pieces that are going to fall out to behind the crown, moving forward to maybe slightly at high recession, okay, curving it slightly inward to create my halo. And the reason why I'm taking a halo section is because I want to leave all these fringe bits out so then I can go in and razor that short disconnected undercut length. Okay, so I'm trying to let you guys see and move around so that Samantha can see all what I'm doing up here. Okay, get her sectioned out this way. And if you guys please have any questions, shoot them in the comments below, and Samantha will relay them to me, and I will try to answer the best I can. Okay. So I like to take the teeth of my comb and move the hair around as I section her hair out. And you guys, it doesn't have to be perfect because her hairline is perfectly imperfect. Do you guys see all of these cowlicks in the front? A lot of her hair naturally, at its natural state, is moving this way, right? It's moving this way, it's moving this way. And so I want to account for all of that movement in my sectioning pattern. Okay? So
Heather Gunter says, hey, from Aveda Institute in Dallas.
Hey, thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate all the love. All right, so I'm going to clip this section out of the way nice and cleanly. Whenever I work nice and cleanly, I always feel like I have control over my haircut. So if you guys ever feel like you're losing control within a haircut, go back to the first step of your haircut process, which is your partings and sectioning. Okay, so let's see if you guys can see this bird's eye view. Cool. So you see how
do a little recap on the shape that you're doing because you have a lot of viewers now.
All right, cool. So if you guys are just tuning in, this is my beautiful model Rhea. We are doing a variation of a textured mullet. Her hair before I clipped it out on top was quite long. So right now, what I just did is I just sectioned out this halo section on top, okay? Leaving out this crown bit because back here, all the hair wants to naturally fall behind her radial. So I want to leave all of that hair at its natural state, and I don't want to incorporate it into the halo because if I do, and I cut this short, all this hair wants to do whenever it's at its natural state is just stick out. Okay, so that's a great way for you to just keep that a bit on the longer side, so whenever her hair is falling naturally when she styles it, you don't have those shorter bits that sticks out. And what tends to happen when it does get a bit short. Okay, so I've left her small section in the front out because I'm going to start at the fringe, and I'm going to re-wet it because I'm going to razor it. And whenever you razor hair, you want to make sure it's saturated quite well with water. There's nothing worse than taking a razor into dry hair and just seeing that cuticle flare out, you know?
Do the motion again.
Bah! All right, so again, I'm combing everything at natural fall, making sure I account for all of her whorls, her cowlicks. Her hair is pretty gnarly in the front, so I want to make sure. No offense, but we gotta talk about it, okay? And so I want to make sure that I don't go too short, because if I go too short in this fringe area, all it's going to do is just stick out in these certain areas. My end goal with the shorter fringe is that these layers on top where I sectioned out her halo are going to fall over. There's two things happening there. Whenever these layers fall over this short fringe, the weight of those layers are going to kind of collapse the fringe as well, so it's going to make it piecey, kind of like mine. My hair with my fringe, whenever Austin cuts it, is that it's a bit disconnected, shorter on top, and all these layers kind of fall on top. So that's the idea of it. Okay, so if you're a little bit nervous, it's just gonna look a little crazy. We're gonna feel like, oh my God, you just like gave her baby bangs, but we're not. So I'm gonna use a razor. Whenever I use a razor, I'll show you guys how I open it. So here's a feather razor, open it up, okay? I usually like to pinch this part in, and then that's how you hold the razor properly, okay? So I'm gonna start in her center forehead. So these links, I'm gonna want them pretty irregular. So I'm gonna pinch a piece, and if you wanna keep on the safe side, you wanna go on this side, maybe it'll be a little bit easier for you guys to see. I'm gonna pinch a little bit and leave a little more length just to see how her hair is gonna react. So keeping it safe and then taking it shorter as I go to see how her hair is gonna react. And I usually even like to tap at the scalp to see if it'll give me a little bounce, okay? Just to make sure it doesn't kick out too much. But right now it seems like it's kind of laying quite well for me. So I'm gonna go in and even take a little bit more off. And whenever I'm going in to take these shorter bits, I'm actually just kind of using my razor and just using the tip of my blade to kind of carve some of those sections out, okay? And like I said, I want them to be quite irregular. So you can have shorter bits, you can have longer bits. But as I work through to the corner pieces, you remember how her hairline kind of moves a bit to the left here? I want to make sure that I'm taking into account my end result and what this shape is going to look like for me. Okay, I'm going to over direct slightly towards the front just to maintain some length at the corner of her recession areas. And you can already see like these pieces here at her recession are a bit thicker than these pieces. So I'll even go in and maybe release some of that weight with my razor internally. Still using the tip of my blade to kind of release some of that weight. You guys see that? And then continue off to the corner pieces right here. Okay, so you can stay there, Samantha. I'm even gonna take slight diagonal back here. Just a very fine section of a slight diagonal back, right? And if the hair isn't staying, I'll re-wet it a little bit. And I'll even do kind of like a slight undercut for the front hairline. So I'll incorporate all this fringe bits into this hairline here. And all this obviously will kind of come over it as I cut the sides later. Okay, so I'll move her head this way. So body position is a little bit easier for me when I move her head. She does have a neck, so don't be afraid to move your client's head around if you are having trouble getting into some certain areas as you cut. Okay. Slightly taking that a bit shorter. Okay, I'm going to re-wet this because it's a little dry. You guys can see that. Always cover her face whenever you re-wet someone's hair. Not trying to give her a shower. Okay, so still want to take this quite short because all of this is going to come in and we're just going to slightly undercut this bit right here. You guys see that?
We got it.
Cool. Trying to work as away as possible. Okay? Cool. Sweet. So all of this is pretty short. All this is going to come over later when I work the sides. Okay? So moving on to the other side. Still kind of seeing where that hair wants to lay naturally. Pinching as I go. And whenever I go in with the razor and I'm initiating the razor to the hair, I get like a slight running start, like this. And that kind of helps me engage the hair a little bit better with the razor. Instead of just going in and trying to like cutting it right where I want to be. It's like just slightly. Cool. So same thing on this side, right? Take this slight diagonal back here, right at the front hairline. All of this is going to be an undercut. I'll re-wet that a little bit. So you guys can see that my hand positioning changes. When I took a diagonal back on this side, my hand position is here. My thumbs are pointing away from the face, right? And I'm going in and razoring at a diagonal back. When I was on this side, my thumbs are pointing away from the face this way, mimicking my diagonal back as well. Okay, so I'm going to talk a lot about body position whenever I'm working through this haircut. I think it's very important to understand where you should be standing, how you should be holding your tools, and also making sure that you're comfortable at where you're cutting. I think one of the biggest foundations or ways to improve your haircuts is just learning how to move through hair, your dexterity, right? So, cool. Some areas that are a bit heavier, I'm going to go in, just take a little bit more weight internally out with the tip of my blade. Just kind of carve some of that out. Okay. Get that little bit.
From Heather Gunter, for my students, what can happen when you don't utilize the correct hand position?
So a lot of things. Whenever you are not using the correct hand position or body position, longevity-wise, you're going to have a lot of aches and pains in your body because you're not working fluidly through your haircuts. But also, it just helps whenever you're working through and you know that, okay, if I took a diagonal back here and I'm utilizing a diagonal back, my hands should be mimicking this diagonal back and cutting in this manner, because if I was here and I was trying to do this, this would be really hard for me to cut this way, you know? And so knowing these rules about where to stand and about where to hold your scissors and things like that is just going to help you move through haircut a lot easier and a lot more fluid. So great question. So the front bits are done. You guys can see created a really nice short fringe, but it's still laying flat. If I were to cut this any shorter, I feel like it's just going to stick out. So you guys, this is a it's like borderline. If I took it a little bit too short, then it's definitely going to stick out. So I like where this is falling naturally, and then I'm just going to move into the sides, and I'm going to switch it up. I'm going to use my scissors now. Okay, so the sides, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right at the top of the ear. Okay, I'm going to section both sides. Make sure I have that. And so 2 radials, section the front and the back out. Okay. And what I want to do here is I'm going to take just slight diagonal forwards, right, in front of her ear. Okay, and I'm going to collapse a lot of this length here. I haven't decided if I want to square it off or if I wanted to round it and then have a lot of these pieces kind of a bit more softer around the ear. So let's see. So body position, hand position. I'm in front of my section because I'm going to be on base with each section. Okay, on base, on base, on base. As I'm working on base, I'm going to shift my feet every time I move through the haircut, because if I'm on base with each section and if I don't shift my feet, everything that I do in front of this ear area, I'm going to naturally comb to myself, and it's eventually going to get longer because I'm going to slightly over-direct each section if I don't shift my feet. So another point in body position is you always want to square up with your section so that when you're working, you're on base with each section. Okay? If I was to over-direct to the previous, I would plant my feet, over-direct and work to the previous, work to the previous, work to the previous. Okay? So in this case, I'm going to be on base. So first, I'm going to mimic my parting, which is my diagonal forward. My hands are at a diagonal forward. My thumbs are pointing towards the face. Okay, 90, and I'm going to cut this squared. Okay, move this hair all the way away from your parting, so make sure it's nice and clean. When I'm working, I always want to make sure I'm working nice and clean. So I want to collapse this front area quite a bit, so I'm going to take this a bit shorter. Okay. When I'm combing that hair out from the scalp, I'm going to make sure my comb is not pivoting, but I'm taking this comb out and I'm just combing it right through my section like that. Okay. Using my middle finger to lay my stationary blade on, and then only using my thumb to close my scissor. Okay. That gives me stability, and that also gives me control whenever I'm working with my scissors. So I split this section in half, nice and cleanly, move that section out of the way that I just cut, continue with my slight diagonal forwards, right? I'm going to shift my feet a little bit and even move her a little bit as well. Okay, just that tiny little shift makes a huge difference. Okay, so here. Bring that comb into your section, okay, just like this. You let the comb do all the work and then push that hair out. Okay, guide. So even whenever I'm point cutting, I'm trying to point cut super parallel to the hair shaft. So if I do, I need to not cut like this, but like bring in my blade into the hair like this as I'm cutting. Okay, that little shift in the elbow right here, bringing that elbow up, is going to help me cut more parallel to the hair here. You guys see that difference? Okay, so I'm cutting it, I just decided I'm cutting it squared, and then I'm slightly leaving it a bit longer at the ends to account for some of this length on the ends. Split this in half, continue with those diagonal forwards. Okay, shift my body a little bit, See where my guide is? You guys see that? Okay. Lifting my right elbow up so I can be super parallel to my section. Keeping that squared. Okay. As I'm working down my section, I'm going to slightly increase in length to the bottom of the section to maintain some of those lengths at the sideburns. Keep wanting to call them bitch handles. Okay, moving through the haircut. Still on base. I haven't over directed anything. Guide. Shifting my elbow up. Getting rid of some of those links. Point cutting. Like I said, if you point cut, you want to point cut with a purpose and not point cut like putting into point cutting with weight lines. Okay, so you see how soft I'm keeping that perimeter? You guys see my line? Okay, continuing my... So now I'm going to over direct this section to the previous where I just cut. You guys remember that I just undercutted this whole hairline section? I still want that to be an undercut. I still want this hair to kind of lay over it.
You have a question. Why did you choose to use diagonal forwards instead of diagonal back?
That's a great question. So with the diagonal forwards that I'm utilizing right now, I want this hair to kind of push forward whenever she wears it. Diagonal forwards and diagonal backs aren't going to push hair like it's always just going to encourage some of that movement, you know? And so I want to encourage some of this movement towards her face here. And then when I get to the back behind her ear, I'm going to take some slight diagonal backs and kind of encourage some of those movement away from her face. So a lot of contrasting features. But if I were to take diagonal backs, that's going to do is just always push that hair away from the face. Okay, so great question, but I just wanted to keep some of that hair moving towards her face. Cool. So last section right here. You guys see that? I'm going to over direct that as well to that previous section. Just knock some of that length off here. And might want to keep some of that. So we'll see whenever it dries. Cool. So you guys can already see how this is collapsing a lot more. Okay. So I'm going to move on to the other side here. I'm going to re-wet it a little bit. So taking that section right above the ear, just like I did on the other side. Taking my diagonal forwards. Again, my body position and hand position. Thumbs are pointing towards the face. My fingers are mimicking the parting here. Okay, so it might be a little bit easier if we got on this side. Is that good?
That's perfect.
Cool. So combing the hair out at 90. Okay, and how I determine the lengths on both sides is I want this weight to sit right at low recession. So here, this hair is going to sit right at low recession. Okay. Cool. So it doesn't matter if I'm doing one side or the other. If you always reference your weight lines and where they're going to be placed on the head shape, then you'll know how short to take each side. So I'm not measuring my lengths by inches or like, okay, one side is going to be 4 inches, the other side is going to be 4 inches. No, I'm using this reference point, my weight line, to sit right at low recession so that I know both sides are going to be even. Okay, so I'll go back in, make sure both sides are balanced. Cool. Split this in half. All right, move all that hair out of the way. continue with my diagonal forwards here. Okay. I'm working in front of my section, centering up with my section, combing it straight out 90. And whenever I'm point cutting, you guys can see that I'm still laying my blade on my middle or my ring finger stationary, and I'm going in and point cutting it in. Okay. Slightly longer at the perimeter, still cutting it squared, but slightly longer at the perimeter. And for these first two sections, I always like to check my balance just in case. So I'll go back and check my balance visually on both sides, seeing where both these weight lines fall. So right at the lower section area. Okay. And then I'll continue moving through the haircut. Okay. You see how nice and cleanly that is? It makes me feel like I have total control over the haircut. Okay. Take one side, take the other side. I like to comb it from both sides like this. And then I'll lay the hair over my fingers. Bring my elbow up as I cut. And whenever I'm point cutting, I'm always pushing the blade out whenever I'm point cutting like this. You guys see that? Okay, that helps me not, for one, cut myself. And also gives me a little bit more room to point cut. So I'm point cutting away, bringing that blade back and out as I'm going in. Okay, when I close my blade, I'm closing it out like that. Okay. So last couple of sections from the front hairline, I'm over directing it slightly back to the previous, so I can maintain some of that length to go over her undercut fringe. So all of these links in the front hairline, I'm going to over direct back. And even this one right here, over direct that back. Make sure I'm balanced on both sides. So this last section here. Knock some of that corner off. Cool. So I like how all of these hairs are kind of falling over her fringe or over her undercut. So all of that, if it's too long, I can always detail it out whenever it's dry. But right now I like where it's falling and where it's collapsing. Let's see. Cool. You guys have any questions? We're good? Rocking and rolling? Mm-hmm. All right. So we've covered the fringe, covered the side hairline, and we have covered the side pieces. So now I'm going to go in and take slight diagonal backs from that back corner of the ear area. And the reason why I took my radial from the top of the ear is because I did not want to include anything from this transition area into this front sideburns area, because a lot of things are happening in this area. And I want to kind of reference this mannequin head over here. Whenever I talk about head shape or anything that's going on around the head, this head is not a perfectly round beach ball, right? If I were to throw this head on the floor, it would just wobble and jump and bump everywhere because it's not a perfectly round surface, right? So there are slightly smoother or flatter surfaces on the head. There's areas where there's more roundness in certain areas, and you have to account for all of that whenever you're cutting hair, because whenever you're working on the surface of the head, you got to know what's going on underneath it. Okay, so whenever I'm working this transition area, there are two things that are really happening in this area. There's a jump in the hairline. So if you're moving from the front hairline to the back, there's a huge jump or dip in the hairline. And then there's also a smaller surface area to work on here and a way larger area to work on here, okay? The reason why this area is so important and that you wanna make sure that you're accounting for this area is because you get a lot of holes, or you may take an area a bit shorter and then there's like a jump in the hairline whenever you're working maybe like a graduated shape or something like that, okay? And so the reason why I didn't want to take her radial any further than that is because I didn't want to account for any of that. So now that I am working towards more of the back, whenever I take this section, her slight diagonal back section for her mullet, all I'm going to do in these corners, guys, is I'm going to kind of edge out some of the links here because I'm going to create and collapse a lot of the hair and layer a lot of the hair back here a little bit more. Okay, so all these links I'm going to take in and really just quickly get rid of some of this length. Oh, you guys can see. Okay, just going to take some of that, mimicking my diagonal back a little bit and just knocking some of this length off. Cool. So I'm just taking the heel of my blade, just slightly opening and closing a little bit as I'm working through and edging some of those pieces out. Okay. I'm going to continue with my diagonal backs. I'm going to keep everything stationary. So the guide is at a stationary point. I'm combing all of this hair back into this stationary guide, and I'm just kind of, you guys can see this way? Just kind of connecting some of those pieces that I cut in front of the ear area into my section. Okay.
How long have you been doing hair?
I have been doing hair for about 14 years now. In the beginning, whenever I started doing hair, I never liked telling people how long I've been doing hair because it really doesn't matter. You could be doing hair for 50 years and doing it wrong, you know? And so whenever I do talk about myself or things like that, I try not to incorporate how long I've been doing hair just because, yeah, you have so many ways to improve how you cut hair, and I think time is just a small part of it. Okay, so cool. This side. So never tell or never feel like you're inadequate, or if you're not, you know, doing hair for 10 years that you're not a great hairdresser. You just got to put in the work, put in the homework, do your head sheets. Yeah, just put yourself out there. All right.
Yes, we will post. Someone asked if we could post the mannequin map that
Yeah,
we showed.
for sure.
Will definitely post.
So again, on this side, since I've taken a diagonal back on the other side, again, mimicking my diagonal back, my thumbs are pointing away from the face, okay? Taking that short length that I did right at the ear, and I'm just kind of connecting this length to the sides by just edging some of those links out, okay? That's where the break is, that's where it gets longer. Just going in front of my fingers and just going in, kind of edging some of those links out, okay? And if you guys are interested, we are an education space here at Hair and Industry. We host a lot of classes. We do talk about the mannequin head that you guys just saw. There are foundational cut courses that we really dive into head shape theory. A lot of, we work with a lot of head sheets, hands-on, and demos.
You got a shout out. They love the educator's hair and style.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Shout out to Austin Finley for the haircut.
Oh. That's the first time she's giving me a shout out. She's like,
Shout
I do
out.
it myself.
No, this does not happen by myself. Cool. So just checking the balance visually, seeing where these links right here are falling. Okay, making sure they're falling equally on both sides. And taking the sides, just combing it through to make sure they're both even. So this side is slightly longer. I'm just going to go in and sort that out real quick. So I can see where it's long. It's right here. Okay, y'all see that? So I'm just going to sort that out. Bam. Now we're good. Cool.
Bam.
Bam. All right, so moving on to the back. You guys still following me? I didn't lose anyone yet?
Oh, you're doing good.
All right, cool. So the back, I'm going to approach, again, I want to make sure that I'm accounting for the crown area. This is going to be my shortest length. I actually don't want to really take anything shorter than this. Whenever I comb this out and just check what her hair is doing in the underneath, and I do this a lot with clients during the consultation because I kind of want to see what it's doing. And so what I find here when I comb this out is that her hair is a bit short here, gets a bit longer here. You guys see that? Okay. Still gets long here, and then right here at the nape it gets super long. Okay, so I do like all this length at the nape, at the very, very base of the nape, but I don't like a lot of this bulk right here. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of some of that bulk and then leave the initial length at the base of the nape, my guide to length. Okay, so going to take my guide. First, I'm going to just take a vertical section. Okay, using my guide to length from the crown. This is the shortest piece I want to go, or the piece that I'm going to start with. And I'm just going to kind of square everything off and get rid of some of those lengths right there. Cool. Using, again, and a lot of people point cut a little differently than others. Whenever I point cut, I, for some reason, kick my pointer finger out like this to kind of counterbalance my scissor. And so if I point cut and I'm point cutting here, it kind of gives me a little bit, I don't know, it feels a little unnatural to me. So I kind of just leave this pointer finger out. And then it gives me a way for me to counterbalance my scissor to just feel a bit more natural to me. Okay, so like this. Everyone cuts differently.
It's a little fancy. It's like the pinky up.
I know, the
pointer
pinky up, right?
That hand's going crazy.
My hand's going crazy. But these little idiosyncrasies, is that what they call them? Idiosyncrasies all make us who we are. So as long as you know the rules and you know how to deviate from them while still being able to explain, then yeah, more power to you. So you guys saw what I just did, okay? Just took a vertical section for my guide, using my crown to the guide as my guide to length, and then just squaring this off, but leaving some of this hairline length at the base out. Okay, so this is quite a large of a section, right? So typically, we would maybe even put like a radial to section this out, to like isolate this area, so this section will be a little bit bigger or smaller, but I took this whole section as one section, and so you can divide it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some slight diagonal forwards. Okay, I'm going to do my left side first, slight diagonal forwards. And what I'm going to do is just kind of continue those slight diagonal forwards to those corner head or corner pieces, and then I'm going to over direct some of those pieces back. But right here, I'm just going to take a smaller section so it's easier for me to control. So I'm not taking one large section here. Okay, nice and clean again. Pushing a lot of that hair away from my parting so it's nice and clean. Okay, I always like to explain it to where, like, if you're cutting hair at the chair and you're not utilizing clean sectioning, and it's like if you're on stage, people should still see what you're doing on stage. So knocking that out. See how? Yeah, shoot.
Why are you taking your diagonal forwards from the bottom instead of the top of the section?
So the reason why I'm taking, that's a great question, Nicole. The reason why I'm taking my diagonal forwards from the bottom of the section first is just to subdivide this huge section. So I'm not taking one big section and just working through it. I'm just subdividing it so I have a little bit more control over what I'm doing. Yeah, just for control purposes, really. Because all the sectioning is still all the same, slight diagonal forwards, right? So you see I'm squaring off this piece, square off, but I'm leaving this base of the length out. So all this falls naturally out. Okay, so continuing my slight diagonal forwards. Right, I'm still on base with each section. Okay, nice and clean. Moving all that hair out of the way. Pivoted my feet a little bit, or shifted my feet, I should say. Shifted my feet a little bit. My guide. Got a little shadow behind me. Okay, knocking this off.
The camera at your feet.
Oh, my dirty shoes.
People are seeing your dope shoes. They need to be cleaned.
All right, you guys see how that's the base of the nape. Okay, I'm letting all that drop as I'm working through to the sides. Cool. So you guys can see how this is collapsing at the nape and kind of coming out a little bit. And I'm still going to maintain that mullet shape by over directing a lot of the last few sections back. It's still going to have a slight corner to it, but not just like a heavy corner. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and incorporate some of that crown area. Okay. Flip over. I'm going to comb through. Okay. All this is just slightly reaching. I'm going to slightly over direct to the previous now. Okay. You guys hear me pretty well? Still good?
Volume's looking good.
All right, cool. All right. Working my tools, knocking some of these links off. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. I'm going to salon speed it. Okay. Over directing all this to the previous. You see my guide from the underneath there. Okay. You guys see whenever I'm point cutting, I want to really create that softness in this shape. So I'm not going in at an angle with my scissors and knocking in chunks and chunks and chunks. I really want to be parallel with the hair to create a lot of that softness. Okay. What I see a lot is whenever people do point cut, they kind of point cut into the hair with notches, and all that's doing is creating
Shark bites.
shark bites, weight line, weight line, weight line. Okay, so that is not what we are wanting to create. Okay. Moving through to the sides, over directing all of this back to the previous. Just slightly reaching, like some of the hair is slightly reaching now because we are over directing. And what does over direction cause or prevents or just maintains length. So every time I over direct a section, I'm going to maintain length. So whenever I first started off doing hair and I'm learning these terms, it's really like you're learning a whole new language, right? But as you talk about it more and as you work through your haircuts and you repeat some of these terms like over direction and elevation and distribution and what it does, you familiarize yourself with the terms more. And even though you don't fully understand the terms, you kind of get to just make sure you familiarize yourself with it, okay? So you guys see how this is collapsing really nicely. I still have this corner where her hair is falling right at the nape to make it feel mullety, but not like a boxy mullet, you know, because you guys can see the difference between the side that I haven't cut and the side that I have cut already. Okay, cool. So moving through, split my guide in half again, taking that profile parting right at the crown too, all the way through to the nape, pushing all that hair away from the parting nice and cleanly. Okay, starting from the second half of my section, I'm going to take these slight diagonal forwards, just as I did on the other side. Okay, my body hand position is going to change. Remember, if I'm taking slight diagonal forwards, my thumbs are pointing towards the face. Okay, I'm going to pivot my comb. Whenever I'm working in my comb, I'm going to bring that comb, the teeth of it is going to come into the scalp and then bring this hair out like that. Okay, see where my guide is. Okay, if you don't see your guide too much, then take a little bit more of your guide from the underneath. Okay, that bottom section right there. All this hair at the nape is just going to drop out. Okay, making sure I'm still elevating it to a 90. Okay. Point cut into my section. I always like to check my first sections to make sure that I'm balanced. Because if you're not balanced on those first sections, then you're going to be off for the rest of the sections. Okay. So a slight little bit right there. I'm always keeping my blade anchored to my ring finger. You guys see this right here? So I'm not just cutting freely.
You have a question?
Yeah, what's up?
Would you recommend this haircut for curly hair?
Yes, for sure. Rhea actually has a slight wave, slight curl to it. I mean, it has a, it's really easy for her to smooth her hair out, but also if you enhance it with some product and diffuse it, you can really bring out a lot of her texture as well. So yes, like curly hair for this haircut would be marvelous. You guys see my guide nice and clearly. Hand position, elbows are up, right, to maintain that 90 degree. If my elbows were down, I'm going to automatically drop my section. Okay, so make sure you bring those elbows up as I'm cutting, right? Guide. And all that at the base is going to drop out anyway, so I'm not even worried about it. This little bit here. Okay? Again, check my sections, my balance on both sides as I'm working. Cool. We're good to go. Half of one section. Nice and clean. Okay? If the hair dries up on you, it's harder to section. And keeping it clean. Move that hair out of the way. So these last few sections, I'm going to over direct to the previous. So I'm going to keep my feet where I was at my previous section because I'm automatically wanting to comb to myself. Okay, so next section here, guide is there. Lots of texture as I'm cutting. Okay. Cool. Working down the head shape. You see how I'm combing that hair over my fingers, making sure all of that hair is parallel to my scissor. I can't emphasize that enough. Just learning how to use your comb makes such a huge difference. Let the comb do all of the work, literally. All I'm doing whenever I'm using my other hand is I'm literally just clipping the hair into place so that I can cut it. Everything else, my comb is doing all of the work, right? Okay.
Good sound effects.
I try. I practice that one in the mirror. Okay, so still keeping my feet planted because all of this hair is going to go back. Shoe shot. Shot.
Oh.
You know, Balenciaga had that whole season where they did the dirty shoes, and and I'm like, yes, it's in style again. All right, so.
Dirty shoes are in style.
Yeah, check it out. Right? Even the trash bags.
I like the paint splatter.
Yeah. Okay.
It's personal.
Cool. All right, so back is done. Check it out. You guys see all of this nice texture, right? Everything here, keeping this length long. I didn't really touch the lengths at the crown, collapsing a lot of this mid area that she had, but leaving a lot of the length at the base of the nape. Okay, so that's gonna, like you can already kind of see her texture, her natural texture come a little bit. Again, she did wash her hair with New Wash, which is great. It didn't strip any of her natural oils out. And I'll diffuse it a little bit with some hair balm and finish it with a little bit of undress, but I'll get to that later. Any questions? We're good? We're going to we'll detail everything at the end when it's dry. But yeah, hope you guys are still digging it. So for the top, I'm going to go ahead and let's see how long it is all right, cool. I'm just kind of winging this guy, so we'll see what happens.
I love that for me.
Yeah. Sorry. So I love all these links that are coming over her fringe, like we talked about in the beginning, right? So all of these are just kind of falling where I kind of want them. So maybe I'll just kind of detail those at the end whenever it's dry. But what I really want to sort out is all this link at her parietal ridge. I don't want this to lay too heavy right around her parietal ridge. So I'm going to go in and just take a vertical parting just through the top at high recession. Okay. All right. And you guys see how this, where her halo was, is a bit long right there. So I'm just going to go in and soften a little bit of that length by continuing those diagonal forwards from the underneath up. Okay. And just kind of softening some of those lengths. I still want them to be slightly disconnected, but I don't want them to be so disconnected. You guys see that? So I'm just going in, just kind of breaking up that heaviness a little bit. Okay, raising my elevation as I am doing that so that I can collapse some of that weight. Kind of slightly even layering it out. Okay, cool. So I like how those are kicking out. Same thing on this side right here. I'm gonna take just a slight, it's a little bit just off that top part.
I have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
Can you use a razor for this cut?
Yeah, for sure. The razor, the scissors, they're all just tools to get you to your end result. I think the biggest difference between a scissor and a razor is the finish and what type of fabric your hair is going to create afterwards. And so with the razor, you're going to get a lot more of these wispy pieces. They're going to be, I mean, depending on the stroke of your razor and depending on how much you're really razoring that hair out, this haircut could be super airy, you know. I wanted a little more structure in certain areas with this haircut, so I am using the scissors to account for that. But yeah, you could totally use a razor for this haircut. I think the rules of using a razor or not are just dependent on the client's hair texture. I mean, there's not a one answers all type of answer, I guess. I don't know how you explain that, but I just assess each client with what's best for their hair texture, how I want the finish to look, and how it will grow out. Okay, so I collapsed the sides a little bit more with just taking 2 vertical partings across the high recession, just kind of blending the sides in a little bit. The top, I decided that I would love for all of this to kind of maintain what it's doing, but I do want to layer out some of this hair. Okay, so I'm just going to go in with a vertical parting across the top, right? So just like a vertical parting across the top. Setting in my guide, okay? And then I'm just going to cut this short to long using my guide to length from the crown, which is not that much. And I'm just gonna dust off some of those lengths with some point cutting. So just barely kind of layering that out because I still want to maintain some of these longer bits to fall over her fringe. Cool. Split this in half. Going to continue with the verticals across the top. I'm going to be on base with each section. Okay. I'm going to speed it up a little bit. Are we good on time?
Yes, you're at 1 hour.
Oh, nice. Split this in half. Continue working on base with each section. This is my last section. Okay. Cool. All right, so I did her left side standing on her right side. I'm gonna do the same and switch over. So if I'm working on my right side, I'm gonna stand on her left side. And the reason being is because I want the guide to be closest to my heart, right? So I see the guide every time I work behind or in front of it. Okay, so I see the guide right there. And I know exactly where to cut it. Okay. Speeding it up a little bit. Taking my verticals across the top, like so. Okay. Just evening, sorting all the links on top. Last section, I took 3 sections on one side, I'm going to take 3 sections on the other side, keep it symmetric, keep it the same. Whatever reaches will reach, whatever doesn't will just fall out. Okay. Cool. So just barely kind of shaped up the top a little bit. But yeah.
What kind of scissors are you using?
Oh, these are some old school vintage Kiki scissors. They're 6.5. They feel like 7s, but technically they are 6.5 scissors. I like using a longer shear because I feel like it's a bit more versatile. And I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of break this fringe up a little bit visually. But yes, I do like a longer scissor just because it is a little bit more versatile for me. I'm just gonna break this up a little bit with some slicing. Okay. You see how those links are kind of kicking out a little bit? I'm just gonna break it up. So whenever I slice through this hair, I'm using the tip of my blade to get into the hair, and as I'm going into the hair with the tip of my blade, I'm closing my scissor like this. Okay. The moving blade is hitting my finger. As that hits my finger, I'm going to close my blade like that. Okay. Like that. And also, you still want to keep that hair really parallel to your scissor. Okay, I'll show you guys again. All this hair, keeping it parallel, so comb all that hair straight out from that section. So this is a bit heavy here. I want to knock some of that length and some of that heaviness out. So bring that hair over. As I'm working my slice, I'm going to close my blade as I'm moving through that hair shaft. Cool. See how that kind of just dilutes some of that weight, still maintains that length, but just breaks up that section a little bit more. Same thing here. And these are very, very fine sections. I'm not taking like a chunk of hair. I'm just moving the hair around, assessing where I like these pieces to fall, and then just kind of playing around with them. Okay, cool. Let me take this, move some of this hair out. Cool. Anybody got any questions? I'm gonna finish her off with a little bit of undressed. Undressed is kind of like a sea salt spray without the sea salt. It's really, really light, so you can use quite a bit of it. I love to use it on wavy-ish, curly-ish hair for like second, third day hair styling. If you kind of already used the hair balm the first day and you need to restructure your curls or your waves, undressed is great for that. You can already kind of tell it's bringing out her texture a little bit more. It's like enhanced, glorified sea salt without the salt water, if that makes sense. So I'm using quite a bit of it, and I'm not going to be afraid of it being too heavy or being too tacky. And that's kind of what my pet peeve is with a lot of sea salts, is that it just gives like a residue feeling to the hair. And I'm just going to diffuse her hair a little bit. Her hair dries pretty quickly, but I want to bring out some of her natural texture. And then we can maybe detail it a little bit.
While you're diffusing, you had a question in the bang fringe area. It says, when you slice, why did you take those sections like radial sections? What sections did you take?
I took more of like just vertical sections across the top. And they were very visual sections. I wanted to address some areas that were a little bit longer that kicked out too much, and some areas that wanted to break up. And so they weren't necessarily too technical in that matter, but there were more so just these slight vertical sections across the fringe to break up some of that length and heaviness.
Thank you.
Yeah. As you're diffusing, I don't really like to touch the hair too much because if she did have a curlier texture, that would actually frizz out her hair quite a bit. So just put in your shape, let the diffuser do its work and its job, and then after, when it's completely dry, then you can kind of mess around with it a little bit more. But whenever it's still wet, you can kind of shape it with your fingers a little bit, but I would try to refrain from touching it too much and messing it around with it too much as it's drying, because that is what causes frizz as you're diffusing. So for some of those people that have just joined us, we are in Dallas, Texas at the Hair and Industry Salon. We host a lot of classes here, color, cut, business, all things hair related. We have a lot of product companies that even rent out the space for events. And if you guys would like for me to come out to your salon to teach, I do a lot of in-salon trainings, one-on-ones. I even do observation days at the salon. You can go to my website. It's guanchow.com. I just launched it last week, so I'm super excited about it. And you guys can see what all I have to offer and what our space has to offer. So slide on in. So you guys can already see how well the undress is just kind of bringing out her texture. Her hair is almost actually all fully dry. Now I'm touching it a little bit more because it's already almost completely dry. Low speed, high heat with the diffuser. You don't want to blast the hair cuticle out too much as you're drying, because also that causes frizz. And you guys can already see how this is laying quite nicely. Remember how we sectioned out that crown earlier in the beginning? The hair already wants to naturally fall this way, and that's how she's going to wear it. When she wakes up, her hair is just going to fall exactly where and how we cut it. I think that just takes your haircut to the next level. Understanding how the hair grows and understanding how to read the hair, so you can cut a haircut on a client that will grow out naturally into how that haircut, how that client's hair falls whenever, you know, she wakes up in the morning. So I hope you guys are digging the shape, the length. I will break it down later, but I will also draw out a head sheet and post it for you guys, because I feel like learning and doing head sheets are super important. It is definitely a foundational tool that I used in the beginning of my career to understand how to cut haircuts and also just be better at our craft. Okay, so already I love what it's doing. I'm just kind of scrunching her hair out a little bit, bringing some of that texture out. We collapsed a lot of weight already, so I don't really need to go back in and take a lot of the heaviness out. Right now I'm just going to go in and detail some of these pieces. So maybe some of these kind of are a little too long still, so I'm just going to back cut a little bit. Just going to go in, pinch a piece that I want to address. Using the heel of my blade right here, I'm going to go in and just kind of back cut that hair to kind of diffuse some of that length. Okay, so here. You guys see that? A little bit here too. So it's cool to do this at the end because you can really see where those longer disconnected pieces are falling, and already like that a lot better. You see the difference from this to this, but I still have that undercut element to it. Okay, so right here, I'm going to diffuse this a little bit with some back cutting. Okay, move the hair around a little bit, pinch this part. Move the hair around again. Okay. Remember this piece earlier that was kind of kicking out whenever I was cutting it wet? I kind of dig it. Might even leave that and just kind of collapse a little bit of weight here with just some slicing. So really get in a slightly okay, I like all of this hair that's coming over the ear to create some of that softness. Okay, so you can really see how much we collapsed the back. Earlier, before we cut it, it was really heavy and boxy and bulky. Right now, all of this is layered out in this mid section, and then we left all these links at the end to where it kind of kicks out. I kind of like some of these pieces. I'm just dusting some of these pieces that have a bit of color on them to just really clean up some of that line there. Okay. Cool. But yeah.